My name is Robert Forster. I wrote for the monthly from 2005 to 2013, and they were 8 wonderful years where I learnt to become a writer. I think I can say with some confidence that I'm the only writer that's ever written for the monthly that had published absolutely nothing before I was taken on as a music critic for the magazine. I'd done nothing. And so before I start reading something that that I wrote in the magazine in 2009, April 2009, a review of a Paul Kelly Best Of album. I'd like to thank Christian Ryan, the first editor of the monthly, who asked me, I was in a band called the Go-Betweens at the time, so I was a practicing musician, recording artist, when I was asked to become a music critic. It was a very unorthodox and brave choice by Christian, because he had nothing to go on. And he had to convince me to write for a magazine that didn't exist, which is a hard sell, because there was nothing that I could hold or see. There was no tradition. There was no back issues. And so our conversation went back and forth for a couple of months in early 2005. And I was tossing it up if I was going to do it or not. And then he told me that, and I was looking for reasons, and he told me that the film reviewer for the monthly was going to be Helen Garner. And then I got it. And I said yes. And I'm very happy that I did. So that first year, I had to read, each copy of the monthly came through. I had to read Helen Garner. I'd read her first in each issue. And a writer doesn't really know what you've written, no matter how much you do it in drafts and with publishers and editors. You don't really know what you've written until you're holding it and you read it. That's the first thing that I learned. And so it was like I was reading my piece for the monthly for the first time when I read it. But before I read my piece, I read Helen Garner's piece. And that was a real, besides everything else I learned at the monthly, reading her before I read me was an enormous education. And so I'd read her piece, which would be brilliant. And then I'd turn the next page and there would be my first pieces of journalism. And I'd sort of read it like that. And somehow I scraped through. And over that year, the difference between Helen Garner and myself, which at the beginning of the year was, something like that. At the end of the year, it was maybe I'd just come up a little bit. And I got a little bit closer to her genius. But so I just wanted to say that before I began reading. I'm reading from a book. It's my copy of The 10 Rules of Rock and Roll, which was my first book, and it came out in black ink, and it was suggested and edited and shepherded into print by Chris Fike from Black Ink, and I thank Chris a great deal for suggesting this book and making it happen. So, okay, this is what I wrote for April 2009. Thoughts in the middle of a career. Paul Kelly's Songs from the South. It can seem futile trying to chase down biographical material on Paul Kelly, because just as he's ducked the glare of mainstream pop stardom, his self-effacement and unease with his past have left the songs to sketch the details, a situation he probably finds himself comfortable with. The bones of the story are: he is born into a large Adelaide family in 1955. His father dies when Kelly is 13. He begins playing the guitar at 18, and after a short time studying arts at Flinders University, he starts to drift. So he's born and raised outside the cultural axis of Sydney and Melbourne, cities he'll live in during his adult life, and he comes late to the guitar, something which doesn't necessarily affect musical potential. In 1974, he's in Hobart, where he makes his first public appearance, performing the traditional folk song Streets of Forbes and Dylan's Girl from the North Country. It can be safely assumed, therefore, that no photos exist of Paul Kelly in satin pants, stacked boots, and a glitter top cranking out Deep Purple or Alice Cooper, as most 19-year-olds with a guitar in their hands were doing at the time. And finally, no matter how battering the winds must have been to send him to Tasmania, the choice of these two songs on debut show a remarkable prescience on Kelly's part in light of his subsequent career. The next chapter of the biography, and it's astounding that no official version exists, would take in the mid to late 70s Melbourne pub scene, where Kelly finds rock and roll and songwriting, in brackets, wine, women, and song, you'd imagine, and a large cast of musicians and characters who play his music and inspire his songs. Out of this come Paul Kelly and the Dots, who make two records, Talk, 1981, and Manila, 1982, for Mushroom Records, albums that Kelly quickly disowns. He loses his record deal, his band, and times must have turned tough enough for him to leave Melbourne and head to Sydney, arriving by early 1985. That journey is chronicled in From St Kilda to King's Cross, the opening track on Songs from the South, Volumes 1 and 2, a greatest hits collection that pointedly has nothing on it recorded before Kelly turns 30. I'll repeat that. That pointedly has nothing on it. That's not written in here. I'm just saying, I'm repeating. That pointedly has nothing on it recorded before Kelly turns 30. Behind him is a life lived on the rock and roll margins. The price is sunken, watchful eyes and a gaunt face. Now come the great songs. Once a songwriter hits a groove, the first 10 years are probably going to be the most productive, if not the best. Volumes 1 and 2 of Songs from the South split at this divide. And while the years 1998 to 2008 are bountiful and well represented here, the character of Paul Kelly, the image of him that still lingers despite the passing years, stems from a fantastic run of pop and rock songs on the first volume, covering the period 1985 to 1997. That character, and as unimportant how close it is to Kelly himself, although his lack of resemblance to the square-jawed lead singers of the day, from James Raine through to Mark Seymour, must have played a part, is appealing both for its comic value and its sharp-eyed take on modern inner-city romance. The Kelly of these gloriously crafted early songs is bemused, looks so fine, feels so low, hungry for love before too long, foolish, dumb things, regretful, careless, and on Darling It Hurts, surely the best song ever about a sex worker girlfriend with a drug habit, Hurt. There's a verse from another song of this period, To Her Door, from Under the Sun, 1987. They got married early, never had no money. Then when he got laid off, they really hit the skids. He started up his drinking, then they started fighting. He took it pretty badly. She took both the kids. There is an empathy here that doesn't seem forced and an eye for detail that is surely one of the finest qualities of Kelly's writing. The break with the group comes in 1991 when the Messengers are disbanded and Kelly goes solo. In day-to-day life, this would mean upheavals and life changes for the musicians, Kelly included. On a greatest hits compilation, it's just one track rolling into the next, but you can hear it. How the grit and muscle of pouring petrol on a burning man, 1990, gives way to the breezy and relaxed Love Never Runs on Time from Wanted Man, 1994. With the Bull Sisters on backing vocals and Peter Luscombe and Bill McDonald starting their long tenure on drums and bass, Kelly becomes a Melbourne recording artist, a move that allows him to pursue his career as rock performer and writer while allowing him to dive into the musical subcultures that have fostered in the city in unending cycles since the mid-70s. So well into his 40s, Kelly stretches out into collaborations, working with different groups of musicians to make the bluegrass and country-influenced albums Smoke, 1999, Foggy Highway, 2005, a self-titled rootsy groove record under the moniker Professor Ratbaggy, and a brittle surf spy guitar album recorded with his resident group under the name Stardust 5 from 2005. Thank you for your patience. Okay, final bit. None of these songs would be as good or as pleasurable if Kelly wasn't the singer he is. It is, and you sense these often unenthusiastic self-appraisals are to blame, his most overlooked talent. His singing can be so in sync with the song's action and character that you forget to notice its quality. It rolls off his tongue. There are no growls or yelps or strange tics or Americanisms or faux pommy bits. He hasn't fallen into the horrible trap of so many old and new folk singers who sound like they've just stepped off the boat at Botany Bay circa 1800. In fact, Kelly doesn't seem to be interested in authenticity at all. It just comes naturally to him, and it reaches further because of that. To the campfire in the bush, the suburbs and the suburban pub, and the inner city sophisticates. His voice, sly and warm, laconic and sometimes frail, may be the closest thing we have to a national one. The first response of a musician on hearing Paul Kelly is often to head to the guitar or piano and work out how his songs go. They invite you to do that because they sound easy and approachable. Most of the tracks on songs from the South are like that. Then you think, if the songs are so simple and the ideas behind them so clear, why aren't more people writing like Paul Kelly and sounding as good as he does? And the answer to that is, they got married early. Never had money. Then when he got laid off, they really hit the skids. He started up his drinking. Then they started fighting. Thank you.